Hey everyone, we are live. How are you guys doing today? No OMC, MMC, I did not lose any pipes. Thank goodness I didn't lose any pipes. We are pipe good, and we did. We lost one in the chicken coop. One in the chicken coop that didn't have any water in it got split. Don't ask me how it got split, but it got split. It was really silly, but that's okay. We're able to fix that. It's just a little bit of PVC. Not a big deal there at all. So absolutely not too concerned about that one. A lot of news today. I'm going to talk about the Fed and the outage that they had here a couple of days ago on the 24th. That got sort of, I feel like, swept under the rug in the news and really didn't get addressed the way it should be. And then we're going to talk about the silver opening on the COMEX. Today was the first notice of intent for delivery on the COMEX for the March month. So we're going to talk a lot about that. I was just on Chris's live stream over on Acadia Economics talking about what's going on in the silver market. So we're going to carry that over today. In fact, I'll probably start off more talking about the silver market, and then we'll get into the Fed. But I do have a background in cybersecurity. My master's is in information assurance, which essentially translates to computer network or cybersecurity. Graduated there from Norwich University in 2014. It was at the time independent ranking #2 cybersecurity school here in the US. And I got to study with a lot of people in government, Homeland Security, the Navy, because it's a private military school, although they let civilians join. So I'm going to use those skills and that information to talk about what I think could have happened to the Federal Reserve on Wednesday. Now, I don't have confirmation of this, but I did want to chat about it because it has some of the earmarks of what could be a cybersecurity event. And I feel like it's free to talk about. It's something we should be talking about because it was radio silence in the press. But I don't want to bury the lead here. So we'll go ahead and get into the screen share, and I'll show you guys what I am talking about. So we're going to start off in silver. Wanted to talk about what's going on in the silver market. Here is the CME daily delivery notices for silver. For gold, there was a fair amount. It's 2,531 issued. But if we drop down here to silver, and we were talking about this with Bix earlier on Chris's channel, 5,904 contracts, about 6,000 contracts, which is about 80 million ounces. An absolute ton of silver on the first day. And guess who got to issue most of it? 2,900 to Goldman. And they weren't stopping very many, so net a lot. JP Morgan issued 13, but stopped just about as many. So JP Morgan was about net neutral, but you saw 2,900 of these contracts of the 5,900. So the majority, or at least the plurality of this 5,900, basically went through Goldman. They had to deliver millions and millions and millions of ounces of silver. And this is a big boom. This is kind of the boom I was looking forward to in December. I thought December would be a big delivery month. That would be the one in which we would see big deliveries in gold and silver. It ended up being, the March month. We had just a really big delivery day, at least the first day of the month. So 80 million ounces is nothing to sneeze at. Is that going to cause a run on COMEX? No. If all 16,000 contracts of open interest were to stand for delivery that were left over late trading yesterday, could that bankrupt the COMEX? No, not if they have the, what is 139 or whatever million ounces it was in the registered category of supposedly liquid silver. No, but man, that could put a huge dent in it. We've already taken 80 million ounces. That's a ton. So that's fairly significant. That's fairly significant. So we have to say this was a big silver day. It definitely was a big silver day. Let's get back to the screen share. We got more information to go over. Silver futures, of course, now we're looking at like $26 price. It's down about 3% on the day, according to the COMEX data. I'm not even looking at the latest data from goldprice.org. But we do have preliminary data on the settlements. And you saw 107,000 contracts settle at 26.40. That's why silver price is down. So they're hammering with paper 107,000 contracts while 80 million ounces were actually coming off the market, or at least being delivered, at least from one party to another. And we assume that a lot of that will be put into the eligible category and taken off for future deliveries potentially. So then we had another 1,200 contracts settle at 26.42. Another 3,000 contracts for July settle at 26.47. But here's why you're seeing this 26.40-ish price, 26.65 on the futures down because of all the paper trading. So this is the paper trading. Now, it wasn't a huge amount of volume. If you go to the volume ticker, let's see, I don't think the volume ticker has today's data. It doesn't. It just has the 25th. But overall, if you look here, 127,000 on the 25th. So we actually had less settlements today than we had yesterday on a big delivery day. Today it was, well, 113 it's saying. So they just adjusted that number. I think we just look at 110. Now it's 113. So in any case, still a little bit less than settled yesterday, but there's still a lot of paper that basically was beating down the silver price. And so I got a short-term silver chart here, the one I always show from stock charts, and you see the volume here. This red volume is more downward pressure on the price due to all the paper. This is the volume. So in millions, it was just millions and millions and millions of ounces. In fact, how much is 113,000 contracts? Let me do the calculation on that here real quick. Let me go to my calculator. 5,000 ounce silver. And what did we say? How many contracts did we say traded? Settled 113,248. So let's put that up on the screen. Let's share that real quick. Share screen on the old calculator. So today we had settlement of about 500 million ounces compared with the 80 million delivered. So that 566,240 divided by 80 million. There's about 7 times as much paper dumped on the market as there were actual deliveries. 7 times as much paper as actual deliveries. That's why the price didn't rise when you had the deliveries. Again, we've seen this go on and on and on 1,000 times. You know, that's what happens in the COMEX market. They hit it with paper, have a big delivery, covers over the delivery numbers. What are you gonna do? Zilly, how you doing? What's up, my brother? What else do we got? We have any questions? Question, is it known how many COMEX contracts that stood for delivery actually were closed out with physical silver? How bad is the 1,000 ounce bar shortage? Okay, first question, Hugh. I don't know how much actually stood for delivery because that's sort of private data. It's transactional data that COMEX doesn't print. All we know is how many actually delivered, which was going back to the numbers. Let me make sure I give you the right number. 5,904 contracts, about 80 million ounces. I don't know how many stood for delivery. They don't provide that transactional data. I don't know if they forced settlement of some in cash. I have no idea. How bad is a 1,000 ounce bar shortage? I just got through talking with James Anderson of SD Bullion. He thinks there is a lot of pressure on that market, but they're not necessarily all sold out. And we've been on live streams and broadcasts with another silver bullion company out of Singapore, and they had something like 150 bars. It was like last week. So there's still some 1,000 ounce bar liquidity. I don't know how much compared to normal market, because a lot of the retail dealers in the US don't. You know, they don't even offer them because they bump up against, you know, some shipping weight guideline. And a lot of the customers don't buy them. I mean, it's $30,000 to buy one of those, give or take, you know, 28, 30,000 bucks. So a lot of retail investors don't get them. But what we hear from some of them that are carrying them is it's fairly tight inventory. What about Silver Shield? Golden State Mint has silver. Good. Go to Golden State Mint if you want your silver. Thank you for the tip. Super Seamster Sewing Show, like your name. Any other quick questions before I get further into the rest of the presentation? Not any obvious ones here. So we're going to go, how long do you think before the price cracks? 6 months? It just depends. It depends on all us. It depends on how much silver we take out of the market. I said maybe 6 to 9 months when I was on the Miles Franklin show earlier this week. I think that's a pretty good estimate for that. Maybe it's conservative. Maybe it's sooner than that. I mean, it could happen tomorrow. Well, look what happened to COMEX today. 80 million ounces were delivered. So it can go quick. If you get some fairly big entities in there with big pockets, it can go really fast. What do you think the real value of silver is James the Waffler? Honestly, I don't know. That's really tough to tell because we don't have a true market. I answered this on the Miles Franklin show earlier this week. If we're talking about just money debasement, money printing, you could be talking 20,000 gold and $1,000 an ounce silver. And if you go to like a 15-to-1 ratio, maybe it's more 20,000 ounce gold and I don't know, $1,500 silver, 2,000, something like that. Excuse me. So that's one measure. Another measure is against all the derivatives piled on top of the gold and silver market. You could be looking at $600 to $1,000 silver, maybe 10,000 gold. It really doesn't matter though, because it's a whole confidence game. So as confidence wanes in the US dollar, money is going to flood in gold and silver. It's not just going to be the US dollar, it's going to be all around the world. So money is going to flow into both metals all around the world. So I think it's impossible to tell. You'd have to take all the M2, and if you want to consider, the Bras money measure, M3, all the debt printing, all that stuff against all the gold and silver ever produced that we know is above ground and accessible, or that we can guesstimate, then you're looking at really high prices for gold and silver. It depends on the reset of the financial system, how they do it, how much they get away with. Do we go to the Fed coins and the cryptos? I mean, there's a lot of factors that play into that. There's really no way to tell, but I can tell you, I think it's going to go much, much higher. Okay, I'm going to get back to, we're going to go back and talk about Fed, because that's the title of this stream. It's Federal Reserve down. And this is after the movie White House Down. I kind of spoofed off of that. Federal Reserve down, were they attacked? As I said at the beginning of the presentation, I have a master's in cybersecurity, worked in the cybersecurity field for about 8 years. Also worked in the IT field for a long time. Yes, I'm an auditor. I was both a systems auditor and a business process or financial auditor. Mostly did systems audit, but did a lot of financial as well. So I have a lot of experience in IT and cybersecurity. I have that master's. I have certifications in cybersecurity as well, cybersecurity management. And also have took training at Black Hat. A lot of you may know Black Hat. It's a basically cybersecurity conference in Vegas every year. I've taken classes on network forensics. My minor and my master's, or my concentration, my master's was on digital forensics. So forensics of computer systems. So I do have a lot of experience in cybersecurity. And I'm looking at the Fed issues, and to me, I think it's very plausible that they got attacked. So I'm gonna spitball here. I have no information that the Fed was attacked. I don't want to spread rumors, but there's a lot of earmarks here of it being an attack. I'm going to explain why I think there's a possibility and why it could be. So let's go back to the share. So here's from Bleeping Computer. Now, it's funny, the way I first got notified that the Fed had an outage was actually through a cybersecurity channel. There's a cybersecurity channel that I'm subscribed to, which came across and said the Fed is down. All their systems are down. And then one of the links was Bleeping Computer, which is basically a tech site talking about all tech stuff, cybersecurity, IT, all that stuff. And they're talking about this Federal Reserve nationwide outage. This is back a couple of days ago on the 24th. It says here, the U.S. Federal Reserve suffered a massive IT systems outage today that prevented wire transfers, ACH transactions, and other services from operating. When performing a U.S. wire transfer or ACH withdrawal deposit, the transaction first goes through the Federal Reserve bank systems who facilitate the transaction. So they're like a clearinghouse in a way. Today, the Federal Reserve banking system, this is 2 days ago, suffered an outage caused by an operational error on their end. In other words, someone made a mistake that caused the systems to go down. At this time, the Federal Reserve Bank has not provided much details other than the system status report. Now, here's the funny thing about this whole situation. I cannot find anything on the Federal Reserve website that is detailing what the outage was. I don't see it. I don't see an explanation from the Fed. I don't see the press release. That to me is a sign that they're not wanting any information to get out about what happened at the Fed. Typically, if you have a reporting requirement, you have to put some information behind what happened. You have to attribute it. And then there's going to be a bunch of cybersecurity people that come out and start talking about it, or, and that hasn't happened here. And was it a cybersecurity event or was it a fat finger? So if you go to the CNBC website, let me share again and make sure I've got sound. So we've got sound shared. So I'm going to go back and we're going to listen to a video here where they're talking about operational error, and listen to the guy talk about a fat finger bringing down the system, which I think is preposterous because you're talking about the entire payment system, multiple avenues of payment system. And that doesn't just happen with a fat finger mistake. That's not somebody hitting an errant key on the keyboard and literally taking down the Fed's payment system, which serves, banks and everybody globally. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So here's the video.
Tyler, the Federal Reserve saying an operational error brought down its entire payment system. In a statement, the Federal Reserve says a Federal Reserve operational error resulted in disruption of service in several business lines. We are restoring services, they say, and are communicating with all Federal Reserve financial service customers about the status of operations. A Fed spokesman said they are indeed in the process of restoring those operations. The outage impacted Fed accounting services, including retail cash and the Fed wire, where banks transfer money electronically between themselves. The Fed said in a statement the cause is a, quote, Federal Reserve operational error. Unclear what the overall impact is. Fed officials did not appear to suggest there were systemic concerns with the financial system, especially since they believe the system will be fully restored soon and is currently being restored. Fed said it acknowledges that payment deadlines are impacted and it's going to communicate remediation efforts to its customers. Unclear if this ever happened before, Tyler. The New York Fed, you remember, was embarrassed, deeply embarrassed, in 2016 when hackers were able to break into the central bank in Bangladesh and trick the New York Fed into wiring more than $100 million. This is a separate sort of problem they're having, apparently, with their payment system. Tyler?
The natural question here, Steve, is there is no evidence, is there, that this was an outside hack? The Fed apparently going out of its way to say this was an internal error, an operational error, which sounds like somebody got fat fingers.
Tyler, I think you're absolutely correct to note the comments by the Fed there that they are not suggesting this is an outside problem. This is a problem that originated inside the Fed. It looks to be something connected with the Richmond Fed, where they appear to be in charge of this this payment system.
All right. So first of all, there are a lot of things to unpack here about that. I'm going to stop the share here for a minute. There are a lot of things to unpack here. First of all, notice how they immediately went to, well, the Fed was hacked a few years ago, you know, and overseas, but that can never happen here. And the Fed went out of their way to downplay that. Why would you even bring that topic up unless you felt as though there was a lot of worry about whether the Fed was hacked? Why would you bring that up and then immediately downplay it without exploring it at all? Because again, I can't find the actual article, any sort of report on any detailed report on what actually happened. The only thing I can find are these sort of quick explanatory videos and articles, which don't give a lot of content. I mean, if you look at the article that in which this video is embedded, it's got 8 or 9, you know, paragraphs here, and a lot of it is not about what actually happened, just talking about operational error. But then they go on to explain, you know, what all this is about. And there are a couple of clues here. So a clue in the video. In the video, they quickly downplay the hack. They mention a previous hack of a system overseas. Then they say, well, that can never happen here. And they're downplaying it absolutely couldn't happen. The fact that they're using that defense, and it's almost like it was scripted. Let's talk about the hack and then say it can never happen here. And it definitely was not the issue. That's almost like a scripted response. If you're going to bring up the issue of hacking, wouldn't you go to some cybersecurity expert and ask questions? You know, why would you even bring it up? Because there's no press release from the Fed that I can find, at least not easily on the internet. No story is really talking about cyber attacks except for this video. Why do they even bring it up? If it's an operational error, why do you bring up a cyber attack? I realize something may have happened minor overseas years ago, but that doesn't mean you're going to focus on that in your video. And why do they do it? The second clue is they're talking about operational error here. You know, I worked in IT for a long time and worked around systems for a long time. If your system is such that somebody can press a button on a keyboard and take down your entire payment system, which, as you'll see in a moment, is spread across multiple data centers, you've got some serious issues with your access rights to your systems, with your change controls to your systems. And if it's really that easy, you don't even need to worry about hackers if you can take your own system down. That's even worse. I mean, it almost would be better for them to say, yeah, somebody hacked us, than to say, yeah, a technician somewhere, you know, sitting at his desk, hit a button and took down the entire system. That's worse. Because if you're trying to quell fears about, is the Fed system resolute, and can you have business continuity when you have an outage, when we'll get to talk about their business continuity plans here in a minute. If you're talking about this payment system, which moves trillions of dollars, being stable, and therefore the dollar system being, you know, that it's supporting being stable, wouldn't you want a better explanation that somebody hit an errant keyboard and took down the entire payment system across several services? That doesn't add up. And my spidey sense is tingling, saying there's more to this story. than that. The fact that there's very little information released, they immediately try to downplay the cybersecurity attack. The fact that systems are built resilient, and they should be in this day and age, built resilient across multiple data centers, multiple levels of security controls, both physical and logical, that somebody shouldn't be able to take down the whole system at the press of a button. That, with segregation of duties, with role-based access control, with all the layers of technology and security, that shouldn't even be possible. So it just sounds fishy to me. And then there's another little clue as to what can happen lower in this article. Now, I've been talking about Fedcoin and the use of national sovereign digital currencies as a replacement eventually for cash. I talked about the IMF paper, showed it in videos earlier last year, and how the IMF plan is basically to push out cash. They said it in their own words, implement negative interest rates in the banking system and go to national digital currencies. I showed press releases showing how 50 central banks have signed on to that plan, how the BIS supports it. We saw earlier this week, and I mentioned earlier this week how Yellen, the incoming Treasury Secretary, basically said she supports it. And now we've got a statement, see if I can find it here, about Powell talking about digital currencies. Okay. I think they're telling you what the potential could be for a cyber attack. The outage occurred the same week Fed Chairman Jerome Powell spoke to Capitol Hill legislators about the progress the central banks have made on its consumer-focused payment system and efforts to develop a digital dollar. So two things here. One, now the Fed is talking about digital dollar, and we know they have the FedNow system, which allows direct payments to people. So if you don't believe that they're going to do a digital dollar, a digital euro, a digital yuan, a digital yen, a digital pound, I got news for you. The evidence is piling up. Secondly, if you want to undermine the U.S. rolling out an electronic payment system, and you're an alternative, another government, and you want your system to be the dominant system, or at least equal to the dollar. In other words, you don't want a digital reserve dollar currency. You want that system of world reserve currency, the dollar, to end when the paper system ends, and you want more competition in the digital currencies that you're rolling out. Why wouldn't you attack all the systems that support the dollar at the same time that Powell and Yellen are basically saying we're going to come out with a digital dollar? Essentially, the Treasury and the Fed announced that they're going to have a digital dollar. They've been implementing plans for it, which I've been telling you for months. Actually, in 2018, I started writing articles about this on my website, goldsilverpros.com. And I think I also wrote something about it on Seeking Alpha a couple of times too. People poo-pooed the idea. Well, here we are 3 years later. They're coming out in the open and telling you they're going to do it. And then the Fed mysteriously goes down. That sounds like espionage to me. Again, I have no proof of this. I have zero proof whatsoever, but I do have experience in cybersecurity. And I do have experience with understanding why people want to attack. And the type of resiliency that the Fed should have around their systems, it takes a pretty serious hack to take them down. I could understand one payment system going down, but when you have multiple their entire system going down at once, that's not, first of all, that's not somebody fat fingering something on the keyboard. That is also not a lack of resiliency in systems. I do not believe that the IT people that work for the government and the Federal Reserve System are stupid enough to build a system that could go down at one operator error fault that could spread across their system and take their whole system down. I refuse to believe that. It talks more to either some sort of disgruntled insider that planted a virus, or something, espionage, another country, another sovereign going to attack it. And again, this is just me using logic. I have no reports. I don't want to spread disinformation. It doesn't sound right. It just doesn't sound right at all. Xavier says, Gold Silver Pros, why couldn't they have done it themselves? They could, but why would you want to undermine faith in your own system? Now, if they wanted to do like a banking holiday, but do it across all of the financial system to cause discord and say, first of all, they wouldn't do it across the digital system because they want to roll the digital dollar. But second, they wouldn't do it for an hour and then be so damn quiet about it. Think about Rahm Emanuel. Don't let a crisis go to waste. Why would you create your own crisis and then go radio silent on it, and then pump out this video on CNBC, which is no doubt a talking piece for the Fed in this respect, and downplay the threat of a cybersecurity attack and say it's a single operator? that just doesn't make sense. And I thought about that. I thought, what if they were doing it themselves to do something? But you can't reset the whole banking system in an hour, so it's not that. Let's see, what else? Any other questions here? System is imploding. Good comment. Digital dollars means a hard reset is coming. Robert, I agree with you. And the fact that they've copyrighted digital euro, and China's already said they're going to digital currency and getting rid of cash. The world is going to digital currency. There is no question about that, unless you guys stand up and stop it and refuse to do it. It's up to all of us. Okay, let's go back to the share. We're going to go a little bit deeper into this. I want to educate you guys a little bit about what I think could be the issue. CNN Business came out and they were talking about it. And one of the systems, the Fedwire system itself, moves 3 trillion. So you can see this number here, 3 trillion transferred daily using Fedwire. That was one of the payment systems. Can you imagine what a lack of confidence in this system could do to our economy and could do to the dollar and to the central banking system? If this was down for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and you're moving 3 trillion a day, how does that affect the economy? How many businesses does that affect? How does that affect the commercial banking system? Taking down the Fed's systems, as much as we rely on systems now to transfer money, especially electronic money through this system, would be absolutely devastating to the confidence in the dollar, the confidence in the Federal Reserve, the confidence in the U.S. and their ability to handle, complex systems. That's astounding. And again, I just not seeing anything from the Fed. That's why I think there's some sort of keep quiet about this. There's something sensitive going on. I just don't get it. Anyway, here's another little piece on the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. They're talking about the different systems. And it's interesting. They're talking about Fedwire and ACH. Both of these were down. So was the check system. I think it's called Check 21 or something. It's where you have the paper checks going through the system. All 3 systems were down, but Fedwire daily averages, and this is in 2019, it's a couple years old, 668,000 transactions on Fedwire, 2.8 trillion a day. Of course, we saw the quote here that it was 3 trillion a day on CNN Business. So between 2.8 and 3 trillion a day, 4.2 million per transaction. So we're talking the big transactions, the big banks in the system, central bank, stuff like that. ACH is 68.9 million transactions daily, 135 billion daily, $1,900 per transaction. Would that hurt the economy if this system went down for an extended period of time? Yeah, that's why this system is ripe for attack. Even if this issue was not a cyber attack, if you're the Chinese and the Russians looking at this, or anybody else who's competing with the dollar, especially the digital version of the dollar, how much of a big cherry is this that you now that you know the system has a weak point, that you'd want to go out and attack it? And that's probably why they're not talking about it. And this is the same story we talked about earlier. Just interesting. Now, I did want to credit the Fed because they do have business continuity. Business continuity is how you recover from an event, especially a system outage. And they've got the business resiliency statement from the business continuity section of their website for the ACH service, which is this one. That's the smaller money transfer service. And then I have it for the check service as well. And then they also have it for the Fedwire. But these are the 2 that I wanted to talk about. The objective on the check system is 2 hours, and the objective recovery for this system, I think they said, is 4 to 6 hours, if I remember correctly, for the ACH. In any case, their business continuity worked. They got the system up in just over an hour, so they're able to get it back up. So their business continuity plans, their backup plans worked. They were able to get the system up and get it back working. So it's good that the business continuity worked. But it's not that I'm worried about. It's why did it go down in the first place? And, having been an IT system for so long, you're not going to fat finger this. That's not what's going to happen. There should be resiliency. There should be multiple day centers. In fact, as I was going through the Federal Reserve website and I didn't, oh, here we go. So here's proof that you can't take it down. One person can't take it down. Multiple data processing centers support Fed ACH application to support warm site backup capability. Data processing centers are geographically dispersed to mitigate the effects of natural disasters and power and telecommunications outages. In addition, the data centers include various contingency features such as data backup, redundant power feeds, and environmental emergency control systems. In my career, I've audited all of this stuff, all of it, multiple times. I've looked at tier 1 data centers supporting government contracts for companies that have those tier 1 data centers. I've looked at financial data centers. I know all the controls they have. What they're saying here is they have multiple sites. So one site, even if you had a power outage or a telecommunications outage or a tornado or a hurricane at one site that shut it down, they've got other data centers that some of the infrastructure would still work. And not only that, but you don't put all of your running, processing, production systems in one data center. They're geographically dispersed. So they're saying here that the chance of an outage on their business continuity plan is low because we geographically disperse across multiple data centers. We've got all of these backup systems. Even if we had an internet power outage in one system, it would still work through the other. So the fact they're saying it's an operational error that you could have taken down all the systems at once with all of this resiliency built in. I don't believe that this is just an operator error. The only explanation could be that somebody put something in the system, whether on purpose or inadvertently, that took down the networking across the data centers to where all the networking went down. The data centers were still running, but they couldn't transmit data. So they couldn't take orders. They couldn't process transactions. They couldn't communicate with each other. That's possible, but they're not blaming it on telecommunications issues. So if the Fed is running on one telecommunications provider that does that on their internet routers, they didn't say that. They didn't say that's what the issue was. And you didn't see that come out elsewhere that, hey, CenturyLink or AT&T or somebody had this big, internet outage. And they weren't talking about any other reason for internet outage. So there's clues here that it wasn't telecommunications. It wasn't power at one center. It wasn't one center going down because they have all of this redundancy built in. And again, this is stuff I used to audit for years. If you're talking about something that's supporting the global dollar and the global financial system, you do not build it to where one mistake can take down the whole system. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. So they have all this contingency testing around what happens when you have an issue, all this business resiliency, all this backups, but they expect us to believe that, this was an operational error and it took down all of their data centers at once. And then they're able to bring it back up in an hour. I don't believe it. I think there's more probability this was some sort of cyber attack. That's just what I believe. Knight Templar, thank you for the contribution. You, me, and Chris, aka Champion, thank you. Appreciate that donation and appreciate all the questions I've got. Everybody here. All right, we're doing good. I've got one more piece I want to show you here in a minute. Let's see. I think we've got some questions here that I can answer. People are pumping silver. Yes, I agree with you. Silver is the investment to be in. I'm not buying anything for some time. I'm all sold out. Okay. That's silver stuff. You guys have questions, put them in the chat. I'm not seeing anything specific to the Fed. I'm seeing lots of positive silver comments, which is good. I like to see that. SLV for the ignorant, brainwashed old system. PSLV for the stubborn, physical, strong apes. I think we've got some Wall Street silver in here, people in here. They love crisis, watch for new regulation. Comment by SPG. I agree with you. That is probably, that's an earlier comment. Yeah, I mean, they could have there's a comment in here about moving large sums and could have taken the system down. Yeah, but I don't think you take the system down. I think you just hide the transactions. I still don't think that that's even an explanation. Create the problem, provide the solution, see Xavier. That's correct, but it was down for an hour. I don't know what problem they're trying to create a solution for. Let's see, any other questions we got? Anybody want to talk silver? Ask your silver questions in here. Oh, good quote, SPG from Adolf Hitler. Terror is an absolute necessity in the founding of a new power. Well, I agree with you there. If you want to scare people into accepting your policies, especially hardline policies. Do you think that will pump more paper next week? Yes. Aren't the reports of debit credit card systems down in areas I haven't seen localized credit and debit card system outages, but if you've seen some, please post links. I would love to see that in the chat. Did I see the 4chan post that this was related to Jimmy Rice 2 days ago? Could it be the whole Fed system, though? They have circuit breakers on the stock market. Do you think they would have stopped ACH transactions and checks? Could be. I don't know that I see a direct correlation there, but I guess could be. Could they have gone dark in order to hide a large money transfer? Rob Gibbs. It's possible, but there's ways to do that. If you're a subscriber to Catherine Austin Fitts, she talks about how they do that, laundering money through various funds like bond funds and things. So you don't have to take down the whole Fed system to do that. They've been doing that through other mechanisms. Could it be? Sure, but I think that just brings attention. For example, some people I know in the financial industry are like, we can't transfer funds. And that raised, the eyebrows of a lot of people. I think you would want to be maybe a little bit more quiet about how you do that. All right, one more piece of information I want to share with you guys, and we'll just get into chatting. So one of the things I want to bring to you guys is a report on APT1. This is a report that came out years ago, and it's Mandate, which is a security company that follows cybersecurity, follows hacks and things. And they're exposing one of China's cybersecurity espionage units. And this is a paper I read many years ago, and it's really interesting. I'll read the first paragraph here. Since 2004, Mandate has investigated computer security breaches at hundreds of organizations around the world. The majority of these security breaches were attributed to the advancing threat actors referred to as Advanced Persistent Threat, or APT. We first published details about the APT in our January 2010 M-Trends report. As we stated in the report, our position is that the Chinese government may authorize this activity, but there's no way to determine the extent of its involvement. Now, 3 years later, we have evidence required to change our assessment. The details we have analyzed, so on and so forth. So we're going to be talking about APT1. Now, there are a bunch of different APT groups attributed to China and other nation states and other hacking groups. APT1 was really one of the first reports to come out. And there's some key findings, and it's really scary stuff. APT1 is believed to be the second bureau of the People's Liberation Army General Staff Department's third department, which is most commonly known by its military unit cover designator, Unit 61398. In other words, it's the military attacking. You'll see here in a moment here, they're attacking. And they know where they're situated, Datong Road, and I can't say this name, but they know basically what facility they're in. China Telecom supported the fiber. So you have the collusion of a state-owned entity and the military. No surprise there. Mandate traced APT1's activity for large networks in Shanghai. APT1 has this is the really, really scary stuff. Now, remember, there are multiple of these APTs operating. This one, back in like 2013 when they reported this, APT1 has systematically stolen hundreds of terabytes of data from at least 141 organizations and has demonstrated the capability and intent to steal from dozens of organizations simultaneously. 141 companies spanning 20 major industries. That's one unit. If you wanted to compromise the Fortune 500 in the US, how many units would it take? 2 to 3? And they have 20 to 30 that we know are operating. They have a well-defined attack methodology honed over the years to steal large volumes of valuable intellectual property. They use the same tools and techniques they observe other groups using. They maintain access to victim networks for an average of about a year. So they were beyond the network stealing information for a year and never got caught. And these are multinational corporations that have pretty good security teams. Among other large-scale thefts of property, 6.5 terabytes of compressed data from a single organization over a 10-month time period without getting caught. Stealing that much data without getting caught is really hard. You have to have a really bad security department. In the first month of 2011, it successfully compromised 16 new victims. So the reason I share this report with you, and there's so much more in here if you guys want to read it, you just look up Mandate APT1 report on Google. And this is just chock full of info. The reason I bring this up is because the Chinese, and to a large extent, the Russians have compromised most US companies and a lot of government systems. In fact, years ago, there was a report that they had basically compromised. I think it was a couple of generals in the US Armed Forces had said they compromised all of their military intelligence. So they had plans to the military systems, missile systems, stealth fighters, stuff like that. And then shortly after that report came out, the Chinese had built their own stealth fighter, and they've had it for a couple of years. We've seen pictures of it on Chinese websites. So that's how China's catching up to us militarily. So is it China attacking the Federal Reserve System? I have no evidence, but it looks like a cyber attack to me. I have experience in this field. It's got all the markings of a cyber attack they want to cover up. I don't think the Fed would do this themselves because it's just undermining their own credibility. And there's other ways to get payments through the system than shutting down the whole system. I don't buy the excuse it was operational error. When we looked at the business continuity plans, multiple areas of redundancy there. That doesn't make sense. You don't build your systems that way anyway. That sounds like hogwash to me. The fact that the one video in which they actually explored this, the only one that I could find, was on CNBC, and they immediately talked about the cybersecurity threat and downplayed it. That all to me adds up to it probably was a cybersecurity threat. Now, I don't have any proof, but I think that's probably what happened. So the bigger question is, and we know that China has compromised a lot of our networks and computing systems. If they can compromise the Fed and they can do this, what confidence do you have in that system? And should you have a little gold, silver, maybe cash outside the system and be prepared that way? Maybe that's just another reason to be into gold and silver. Maybe that's, another reason for us to do it. And, we saw the 80 million ounces delivery in silver and the COMEX first delivery date in March. Maybe the large players are preparing, because remember last month for February, we saw, was it 34,000 contracts of 100-ounce gold that were delivered on COMEX? And now we're starting to see big silver deliveries. It looks like big players are taking metal off the market. Maybe they're preparing potentially for either a collapse of the system, a crash in the system, maybe another repo market crisis, a banking crisis, or maybe they know the cyber attacks are going to come at the same time as well. Maybe the attack on the FedNow system, or the Fed systems, ACH Check 21 and the other one, the large payment system, were probing. Because I worked for a company years ago that was a technology company, and there was probing of their voice over IP system, and it wasn't intended to bring it down, but the system went down temporarily because it just was using some older equipment that couldn't stand up to the attack. And we reported it to the FBI and told the FBI it looked like a probe. So we know that they're probing our systems. Are they probing the Fed system? Maybe they wanted to see if they could trip it up. I don't know. I do know when the crash comes, there's going to be a lot of cyber attacks. It's not going to be one dimensional. It's going to be multiple. You're going to have cyber attacks. You're going to have financial system attacks. You may have some hot wars start. I think all of those things, are going to happen when the system crashes. And I think this is evidence that probably somebody's playing around trying to see what they can compromise. Can you take down a system and add nefarious software for a future date to trigger an event in the months ahead? Geocon, yes, you can. That has happened in the past. It can happen again. That exact methodology has happened in the past, and it can happen again. Any other questions? Let's see. What if they did on purpose to get rid of data, accounting info? What if data goes missing like the day before 9/11? It could be. I mean, that could be. I still think that they wouldn't make it that obvious, but it could be. That's a possibility. What other questions do we have? We may make this a short one today, guys. I just wanted to throw this out there because I felt like it sounded like a cybersecurity event to me. And the fact that everybody's gone radio silent about, the Fed system, which supports the global economy, is really just interesting to me. It's probably the Bank of London, says Shane. Good comment there. Silver to $1,000, and why not? I can see it. Our broker dealers kiting their naked short. Could be. All right. I don't see a lot of questions, guys, about silver. I think silver's, a lot of deliveries this month, as I said on Chris's channel earlier. I may go rejoin that chat over on Chris's channel here in a few minutes. But big silver deliveries, big gold deliveries last month. Those cannot be understated. 34,000 contracts of gold February. March and silver, we started off with a bang, almost 6,000 contracts. Goldman was the one that had to stop. About half of that, I think it was 2,900 contracts. That big movement in the metals definitely looks like the big players are preparing, which means we're probably closer to the financial crisis. And then we had the Fed going down, which looks like a cybersecurity event. I think it's risk on. I think there's risk everywhere, and I think you have to be careful. So in order to maintain your liquidity, get your precious metals, make sure you have cash available to you. Be careful with the banking system. You may not be able to send or receive payments if we have another outage like this, especially if it's an attack, because if an attack, they're going to try to keep it down as long as they can. So that's what I'm saying. We're going to make this a short one today, guys. Thank you so much for the donation. again that we had from the viewer Knight Templar. Oat MMC comes with a $5 one. Excellent update. Many thanks. Beer on me. Just one for this anymore. Thank you, Oat MMC. I appreciate that donation. Thanks for the questions I had today, guys. I'm probably going to be silent until Sunday or Monday. I've got some work to do this weekend to catch up because of the snow apocalypse we had in Texas last week. But wanted to get this quick update out to you because we had the big day in silver. We had the big month in gold last month. We had the Fed stuff. I think they were all worthy to talk about. You guys have a wonderful weekend. We will talk to you next time. Till next time, this is Rob Keens.